I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 3:03 p.m. I'm going to give the floor to our president so that he can lead us in a moment of silence for the loss of HSU student Mattia Roberts. You have the floor, Jeremiah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. HSU has lost another student, and it's not something that I think that anyone kind of can believe, especially in these moments. And so I wanted to take the time to kind of recognize the fact that we have lost another student and really recognize their achievements here at HSU, and also to just provide a moment of silence. So I'll go ahead and just say some of the achievements. So the student that we have lost is Mattia Roberts. Mattia was a political science undergraduate and also had a critical race and gender studies major. They were going into her sophomore year at HSU when she died. During her freshman year, she was registered with numerous clubs like debate, the student union for queer students, the Women's Caucus for Art, and even some of you may have known her personally, and so for those, my heart does go out to you all. So right now, I think, Madam Chair, if we could all have this moment of silence. Thank you all so much for participating in that moment of silence for Mattia Roberts. I really do appreciate it, and I'm sure her family does as well. For folks who are wanting to receive support, CAPS is always in support. Also to reach out to the student's office at their official email. And for folks who kind of want to reach out to a peer or student to student and have that interaction, please feel free to reach out to me, myself personally, or yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you, President Finley, for that. We will be taking today's roll call. When your name is called, please say present. Board Craner Park, may you please take roll call now?
Yes. President Finley.
Here.
Administrative Vice President Lopez.
Present.
Legislative Vice President Cuellar.
Present.
Student Affairs Vice President Jordan Lamar has an excused absence. Social Justice and Equity Officer Roman Sotomayor.
Present.
Environmental Sustainability Officer Josefina Barantes has an absence. College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences Representative Angelica Alvarez.
Present.
College of Natural Resources and Sciences Representative Kenny Mort.
Present.
College of Natural Resources and Sciences Representative Max Schmidt-Bauer.
Present.
College of Professional Studies Representative Jesus Flores was marked as absent. At-large Representative Montel Floyd.
Present.
External Affairs Representative Gio Guerrero.
Present.
Executive Director Janessa Lund.
Present.
And Dr. Dean, Dean Dr. Turnbow. Okay, we're not seeing the dean. You have quorum.
Thank you, Board Craner Park, for taking roll call. I encourage that both our board members and audience members take a moment now to add their personal pronouns next to their name here on Zoom for today's meeting. This can be done by clicking the three dots that appear when you hover over your image. A rename option should appear. I would also like to acknowledge that we find ourselves in a virtual space today. So I ask that when you want to speak or you want to make a motion that you please raise your hand. This allows me to have minimal confusion about who's talking at the moment. and this notifies me as chair that you would like to talk. Also, please remember to mute yourself until you are recognized by the chair. Thank you, and with that, we will be moving on to the adoption of the agenda for today's meeting. This is an action item, and so your vote will be taking place to adopt the agenda. I would now like to ask if there is a motion on the floor. Please raise your hand. The chair recognizes Vice President Lopez.
Approve the agenda.
May I recommend that that motion be changed to adopt the agenda?
Excuse me, adopt the agenda.
Thank you. That motion is in order. Vice President Lopez has moved to adopt the agenda as is. Is there a second? The chair recognizes Officer Sotomayor.
I second the motion to adopt the agenda.
It has been moved by Vice President Lopez to adopt the agenda as is, and Officer Sotomayor has seconded the motion. We will now move on to a vote. Are there any objections or abstentions to the motion to adopt the agenda? Please use the buttons found in the participants list. I was going to ask Officer Sotomayor to lower the hand if it wasn't an abstention, but seeing none, the ayes have it and the motion carries. The agenda is adopted. We will now move on to the adoption of the meeting minutes for the previous board meeting that met on June 5th, 2020. This is an action item, and so your vote will be taking place. I would now like to ask if there is a motion on the floor. The chair recognizes Officer Sotomayor.
Motion to adopt the meeting minutes.
Thank you. That motion is in order. Officer Sotomayor has moved to adopt the meeting minutes dated June 5th, 2020. Is there a second? The chair recognizes Vice President Lopez.
I'd like to second that motion.
It has been moved by Officer Sotomayor to adopt the meeting minutes dated June 5th, 2020, and Vice President Lopez has seconded the motion. We will now move on to the vote. Are there any objections or abstentions? Seeing none, the ayes have it, the motion carries. The meeting minutes are adopted. We will now move on to the chair's report. First, I'd like to say hello to everyone. I welcome you all into this virtual space, and I thank you all for joining us today for our third meeting of the year. This marks the first year that Associated Students is working during the summer, and I am looking forward to our upcoming summer meetings, and so I hope you'll all be able to join us for those as well. For today's meeting, we have our first item of old business, along with 3 items under new business. Thank you, and with that, I conclude my chair's report. We will now move on to public comment. As per the Gloria Romero Open Meeting Act of 2000, authorized by Section 89306, every AS Board of Directors agenda, sorry, my tab closed. For regular meetings shall provide an opportunity for members to the public to directly address the AS Board of Directors on any item affecting higher education at the campus or statewide level, provided that no action shall be taken on any item not appearing on the agenda. However, the Board of Directors may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed by a person exercising their public testimony rights, may ask a question for clarification, make a brief announcement, or make a brief report on their own activities. The AS Board of Directors may also provide a reference to resources for factual information, request staff to report back to the body at a subsequent meeting concerning any matter, or request that a matter of business be placed on a future agenda. Persons recognized by the chair should first identify themselves by name. Time limits will be established by the chair depending on the number of people wishing to speak and the length of the agenda. The maximum amount of time per speaker shall not exceed 10 minutes. And if it is exceeded, I will ask politely that the public comment be wrapped up. In times other than public comment, members of the public will need to have time yielded to them by a board member such as general discussion. The floor is now open for public comment. I will now begin a speakers list, so if you wish to speak, please raise your hand using the button found in the participants list to be recognized. Is there any public comment at this time? The chair recognizes Izzy Rodriguez Torres. You have the floor.
Hello, so I'm Izzy, and I had a few questions regarding the budget. which I emailed everyone from AS, and I only got back one. So I'm wondering when I'm gonna get emailed back to regarding student wages. And that's like more centered on the centers.
Thank you for your public comment, Izzy. If a board member would like to respond to that public comment, you may now raise your hand. The chair recognizes President Finley. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to have the floor. Thank you, Izzy, for coming today and giving this public comment. I think it's really important. So in regards to the email specifically, the Associated Students Executive Committee met on Wednesday to go over the email and developed a plan to respond to it in its most effectively. And so what's going to happen is over these next couple of days is we'll put together something to respond to this email. And I do want to thank you again for bringing it up and putting it at the forefront of my attention again. I really do thank you, Izzy.
Thank you, President Finley. Is there another public comment? You can raise your hand to be recognized. The chair recognizes Kat Nguyen.
Hi, my name is Kat. I'm the director over at the Women's Resource Center, and I wanted to bring up the petition that Izzy was talking about, and I would like for it to be added as an official agenda item at the next meeting.
Thank you, Kat. That it'll be added as an action item for the next agenda, but I'll be dropping my email inside of the chat, and I welcome you to email me so that we can collaborate on the way that it'll be displayed on the agenda. The chair recognizes Anayeli. You have the floor.
Hi, my name is Anayeli, and I'm a peer mentor for Scholars Without Borders. I just had a question regarding these AS meetings and the relationship that Associated Students has with the Dean of Students, because it is my understanding that AS represents the students, and the Dean of Students is more administrative. So I just want to know what that relationship is like and why the Dean of Students has been in AS meetings.
If a board member or pro staff member would like to respond to that public comment, you may raise your hand right now. The chair recognizes President Finley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for that, for allowing me to have the floor. So to Anayeli's question, the Dean of Students is not a voting member on the Board of Directors. However, they are an advising member to the Board of Directors. So therefore, that's why we have to have the board her here every board meeting. And that's why kind of like when we're going through roll call, it's like Dean of Students, and typically they will respond here or present. Unfortunately, they are not here today.
Thank you, President Finley. The chair recognizes Cuauhtémoc Flores Martinez. You have the floor.
Hi, I'm Cuauhtémoc Flores. I just wanted to restate the planning for fiscal stability publicized on May 1st, 2020. The first strategy stated is to maintain students first and focus and enhance programs and service learning. It ensures pragmatic offerings and resources, transforms facilities to connect, co-locate programs and services, enhance service delivery and shared services, and aligns student fees with student needs. The focus is to have students first.
Thank you for your public comment. The chair recognizes CCAT.
Hello, my name is Michael Perez, and I am a co-director for the Campus Center for Appropriate Technology. Thank you for hearing us out. This is in regards to the 2020-2021 budget. We went through the appeal process. AS let us know what was going to be approved. And so I understand that there is now administration has to approve it. I was wondering when that is typically done and when we can expect the final say on what we will be receiving for the next fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you, CCAT. If someone would like to respond to that, you can go ahead and raise your hand to be called. I see a raised hand from our Executive Director, Lund. You have the floor.
Thank you. Great question, Michael. Where it's at is, it's Cherie Gordon has the memos, and she's taking it through the process to President Jackson, VP Dawes, and VP Merriweather. So that's on their desks right now to review and approve. And then as you've probably heard me say before, we're also going to wait or at least another opportunity to review the budget is at fall census, because as you know, budgets are made on projected headcount, which is, especially in this day and age, is very unpredictable. And so once fall census happens, then we will review it again, just to ensure that maybe we have more students than we projected. So we could make adjustments at that point too. But once all those signatures come back, and it will definitely be sent out to all stakeholders. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Executive Director Lund. Is there another public comment? The chair recognizes Izzy Rodriguez-Torres. You have the floor.
Okay, so I'm Izzy again from the Women's Resource Center and STEP Scholars Without Borders. Going back to Cuauhtemo's comment on student fees and how that's going to be allocated, when will we be knowing like what they're gonna be going towards, especially when half of the campus is basically closed? Like, how will those fees get distributed when a lot of us are not going to have access to the gyms, to the pools, and a lot of those other resources that are expected to be when it comes to the student fees?
Thank you, Izzy. If someone would like to respond to that, you can go ahead and raise your hand. The chair recognizes Vice President Lopez. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. Thank you, Izzy, again for your question. I really appreciate that. So when it comes to student fees, we do have, as AS have, as every student has specific fees that go to their student union, or for, in our case, our associated students that that your elected representatives do allocate. It sounds as if the services that you were specifically referring to at this time was the services provided by some of them provided by the by stateside tuition fees, and others would have also been provided by student fees. So my follow-up question to you is, are you referring to the student fees that are encompassed by the tuition, or by the associated students fees that every student is charged as well? Some of those services just seem to get a little mixed up on my end.
Can I add some context to that, Madam Chair? Sorry.
I believe Izzy wants to go ahead and respond back to Vice President Lopez. So I'm going to go ahead and let Izzy have the floor first, and then you may raise your hand to be added after Izzy. Izzy, you have the floor if you'd like to respond.
It'd be just the fees, because back when we were asking for more resources, I do know that the pool had asked for more resources to pay their workers, and that was completely cut off as far as them. But then also, just in general, we're not going to be getting the same resources that we would have had had the school been open.
The chair recognizes Representative Guerrero. You have the floor.
Awesome. So in terms of fees, there's different categories. So there's category 1, 2, and all the way up to 6, I believe. On the state level, we have this platform called CSSA. It's where all 23 campuses meet up to discuss policy that we're going to pursue for all of our campuses. So what we do know so far is that category 1 and 2 fees, which mostly deal with tuition and I forget what two is, but those are here to stay, and those aren't going to be changing or increasing. Right now, what's in the works and what we're talking about are category 3 fees and up. So that's what we're sort of lobbying for on the higher end, on the state level, but no guarantees any changes will be made. We do know that no increases are gonna happen for sure. So hopefully some adjustments will be made, but we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Representative Gio. I would maybe recommend that maybe you drop the Instagram handle for CSSA in the chat, maybe so that people can learn a bit more. The chair recognizes Kat Nguyen. You have the floor.
Hi, it's Kat again. I was wondering how AS was planning on like being the transparency of the budget and the process of like, because yeah, we don't know a lot of like what our funding is going to look like depending on enrollment, but like how are students going to be involved in that process of knowing what's happening exactly with their money and stuff like that.
Thank you for your public comment, Kat. If someone would like to respond, you may raise your hand. The chair recognizes Vice President Lopez. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the floor. So again, I'd also like to thank you, Kat, for that question, because it's a very transparency is something that we are really focusing on this year, especially at Associated Students. So referring to the fees that we as Associated Students allocate through the now new named, I believe, the Finance Committee, or soon to be new named Finance Committee, there is a public committee space that I myself chair with several other committee members that allocate your student fees in a budget that is a public meeting that offers just as much transparency as this meeting itself does, where we allocate the very fees that you were charged across all students. Those fees are available for application throughout the year, which you can find more information on our AS website, or email me or Executive Director Lund for more information regarding that and how that transparency will work and exactly the ins and outs of the committee. But yeah, so it's an application process. So each organization that would like to access fees puts in an application, and the Finance Committee oversees that. The ins and outs of the Finance Committee can also be found on the AS website. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. The chair recognizes Kelsey Young. You have the floor.
Hi, I'm Kelsey. I am an alumna. I got my master's at HSU in counseling psych, and I also worked at the ERC. I'm here to support the reallocation of funds so that we can maintain the student positions, which also put on programming to serve the rest of the student population. And also I have a question regarding when these decisions are made as far as whether these student positions are going to be maintained. When will students know? A lot of these students rely on these positions and they're not even aware that their positions may be at risk right now. And this is going to affect them for the fall. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey. If someone would like to respond to that, you can go ahead and raise your hand. The chair recognizes Vice President Lopez. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to answer your question, Kelsey, when do students know about their student positions? As of right now, there's two answers to that question, and please bear with me, it can sound a little confusing. So we at Associated Students have agreed to, well, have allocated certain funds to certain student positions and not to others. So for example, excuse me. So for some of the student fees that, as seen in the budget and the budget memo sent out to stakeholders about how much of the current budget for the 2020-21 school year and how much of that budget they'll be receiving, they do know already if their student fees are going to be, if they're going to be receiving student fees for their student wages. So that is completely on the allocated budget, depending on which organization we're referring to. So some student organizations know if or if not, they would be receiving funding. Now, some organizations have also are continually asking for more finances and budgeting allocations to their fees, which is a different question, I believe, asking which student fees are, which student wage programs are going to be funded. But what I can offer is we are working on a club grant application, which will take into account the student labor hours that are going to be used when creating club events and campus-wide programs that will be all-inclusive and viewpoint neutral. So they will receive funding through that as long as they apply for that club grants application that is currently in works right now. That'll be available in mid to late August for that application, and most clubs will be trained on how to access those fees. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. The chair recognizes Izzy Rodriguez-Torres. You have the floor.
It's me again. As far as the grant, how exactly is the process? Who's involved in like the grant process itself, like on deciding whether or not a group gets approved or not? Just more transparency regarding that. I know it's a new process, so y'all may be taking some time with that, but it's important, like if y'all are really considering that, to have those steps already set in, like who's gonna be in deciding whether or not these clubs get their grants or not.
The chair recognizes Vice President Lopez. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so Izzy, when it comes to those, how they'll be accessed, again, like as I just stated, it is a very new process. It is the first time we've gone to something this extensive. So we are currently working on that right now, how to get that club grants application out there to make it as objective as possible. Just to give some clarity to it, because it's not, the process is still highly in development and is being made from the ground up. So where we're at right now, we are in the process of trying to create a club grant application that is inclusive over the widest possible range of ideas and opinions as possible, and supports just as many of those ideas and freedoms. So that's what's going on right now. We are trying to make it as inclusive as possible. As of right now, it's looking like one of the caveats to not receiving club grant funding is any formal biases or any formal discriminations that would take place in the process. We wouldn't allow that for any of our student fees to be allocated to any form of discrimination, as per the recent climate of the San Marcos lawsuit. So yeah, let me know if that answered I hope that answered your question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
There was just one last part. So who's gonna be in the board, like, of deciding whether or not the funds are allocated? Like, who will it be? You? Will it be like the president and the vice president? Like, who is it? Only gonna be AS, or is the dean of students gonna be in this? Is the executive director of AS gonna be a part of it, or is it only like students deciding where students are gonna be, where the funds are gonna go to?
Vice President Lopez, you may respond, and then after your response, we're going to go ahead and let Celine go, who privately messaged me that she would like to speak, and after that, we're going to have to wrap up public comments so that we can go ahead with the agenda. So you have the floor, Vice President Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So how is this club grant going to be decided? It'll be decided by your Associated Students elected representatives and a club grants committee that we are currently working on getting stakeholders involved in that. Students are gonna be the only ones that will have a voting decision on exactly how these student fees will be allocated. Only students will have a vote on who gets the money from this grant pot. We will have advisement from Executive Director Lund. We do know that for sure. I am still in the works. We are still in the works of working on who else would be advising. But like I said, only students would have a vote on those things. Thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. Celine, you may have the floor. You can go.
So first off, like a lot of these AS spaces that you're all saying, students have the voice and students this and they can speak up. It's completely classes for a million reasons. A lot of this has to be unpaid time that people like give in, like everybody who's here right now. And I understand that's also the role on AS's shoulders, and the fact that you have the privilege and opportunity to spend your time doing something you may or may not be getting paid for is amazing, but that's just not true of a lot of our student activists across campus. It's not true a lot of our queer students, our students of color across campus. And so when you took away those student wages, it was completely classes. And I understand that budget cuts needed to be made, but it's 100% true that you are being biased, which you said you were going to try not to do earlier when you were making these grants and these decisions, but you completely did. There's a reason that the Women's Resource Center didn't even get the money to pay the wages for the students who could work there. When there's tons of research showing that working at places like the ERC, the Women's Resource Center, working for Scholars Without Borders, even though it's a small amount of money, it allows people, yes, I will give you my last name in a second, sorry. A lot of people who host those jobs, there's tons of research showing that it helps them get to graduation. It helps them pay their rent. These aren't students who have parents who are paying, typically, of course. And as a coordinator of El Centro, working with community so closely this year, I know that these aren't students who have everything paid for, their rent paid for by parents and their school. And I did sit in class next to students who did have that opportunity. And it's completely different when students have to give themselves so much, emotionally, physically, just to be paid a little bit. And I understand, again, that cuts need to be be made. But I think it's kind of wild that you all anticipate and accept and assume that people are going to be involved with AS when they don't necessarily have the time and money to do the things that they care about so deeply. So I just think that you all need to talk about your outreach and the way that you're getting input from students, who's voting, how many votes are you getting? Because if it's not enough where it's really representative of student bodies, if you're not setting it up and going to these centers and reminding people hey, this is happening and this is how it's going to impact you, that's not really consent centered, and that's not really student voice embodied. So please be careful when you're talking to people saying that they're open. And I do think that there is a further conversation. All I was going to ask is that if you're open to it, there are tons of things I've heard about the reasons why people can't get paid. I understand that AS doesn't have their payroll person, but I also understand that we can have folks on stateside funding. It's about $20,000 average for the 4 centers that got completely defunded, and they got zero money, even though other centers did get some money. On average, they're asking between $10,000 and $30,000, depending on how big the group is. Again, it averages out to about $20,000 a group, and I think it's so. It's hard not to be shaky and emotional and cry, because I worked with so many students. I've been one of these students. I depended on these roles throughout. I've got my bachelor's and I'm getting my master's, and I just couldn't imagine people getting the same opportunities they had in life after graduation had they not had some of these roles. I can't imagine some of my students making it through this school year had they not had the role that they played on campus. And I don't think that that's being taken into account at all. I'm not sitting here asking you to give them the full funding for absolutely everything that they needed. We get it. New Times, that budget was decided before, to my knowledge, before, COVID and being home and all this stuff. I think it's paramount that we restructure that budget. And I really just came because this needs to be a future meeting. I'm a coordinator at a center. I'm close with other coordinators. I'm close with students who work these jobs. I'm close with people who are willing to step up and take the responsibility of extra supervision, I know the centers are not perfect. That's not my thing here. I get it. We have a way though to build a more united front and a more united group of people and more trainings and working together. And I just feel like you didn't even offer that option. And I really feel, after talking to so many people and hearing so many stories out, it's a mixture of AS and the administration really trying to control those groups, really making decisions out of fear. And that's not okay. You can't make decisions out of fear for a group of people who have to live their life in fear because of the systems of oppression that they exist in. It's not fair. So I would really, really appreciate if y'all would consider meeting with at least the coordinators and advisors and the graduate students from these centers and these groups, some of which may be here, some of which may have played this role in the past, because these are the people who know most closely how important these roles are on campus. And we might have solutions to what you feel are blocks. And don't tell me about all of the things. Don't tell me about the lawsuit. That is, again, is pure fear. I understand that there is a lawsuit pending and the CSU is trying to figure out how they can best do this. We can talk about that. There's ways to talk around things. We are always going to get people who have the ability to sue people are always going to use that privilege to threaten and to maintain their systems of oppression. That's just the truth. We can have those conversations. We can have conversations about supervision and tighter supervision because we have people willing to take on those roles. And I really, really, really am like asking that you offer an opportunity to really meet with the coordinators who run all the different centers and all the grad students who are working there to maintain these jobs for undergraduates who we know depend on these jobs for emotional reasons, for all kinds of things, for finances. And it's not fair to put people on like a stipend situation because then they're not hourly wages. And then they can't apply for things like EBT, or they might not qualify for other social services. So it's so much deeper than what you might be able to see as like just numbers on a chart when you're getting to make those decisions. These are people's lives. When you take away student wages versus taking away our ability to give up free tampons, then, you know, as student employees, we can go through and fundraise for that. But we can't do that. We can't train. We can't make these centers better without the opportunity to do that, because I'm not the kind of person who's going to go ask a group of already oppressed people to do unpaid labor. So I assume AS is the same. So please, if you all can put it in your calendars or figure out or reach out to us. We're coordinators. We run these centers for a long time. We have ideas. If you have roadblocks, maybe we can come to some kind of agreement and figure something out. And I know you can probably reallocate money or find money on campus for the very minimal for student wages. I'm done.
Thank you, Celine. I know that I said we were going to wrap up after Celine, but I'm going to go ahead and let Jeremiah Finley respond. And then after that, we'll be wrapping it up. But I would really recommend that maybe if you guys are comfortable, we can drop our emails down in the chat so that we can all communicate with each other. You have the floor, President Finley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Celine, I want to thank you for coming before us today to really talk about these tough issues and have these honest conversations that we all need to hear. I think that while some of your words may sting some folks in the room, it might hit too close to home. I think that it's important that we get these conversations rolling. You know, last year there was a lot going on, and so the decision that was made without folks doing more. We did offer opportunities, yes, for the Board of Finance, yes, for the Board of Directors, for people to come and attend. We try to talk with people and communicate through emails. However, I think that we can do more, and I do agree with you. We can get a lot more done. We can start having more opportunities and discussions. That is why this year I'm starting off with leadership discussions, inviting all student leaders to come talk with me, to come voice their concerns in this informal way for me to hear them, for you to hear me and my goals, and AS's goals. I know that Officer Sotomayor and Vice President Lopez are also working to address this and creating some type of greater budget discussion that we all can have and have genuine and honest conversations about the current realities that we all face. You know, it's important that we do recognize more than just the numbers on the sheet and look at the humanistic side of this. Look at the side where the student has to walk down to the Social Security office. Look at the side where the student may have to apply for WIC and have that conversation. Let's open this up and bring this in. I grew up on EBT and food stamps. That's my history. I'm a first generation student. Under no circumstance, I'm not wealthy. I'm not rich. I'm even well off. I do this work because I love it. I love participating, but that's my passion, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to afford to have this passion. And so for me, hearing you and hearing your words today really stirred me. And so if you want to, I would really encourage it. I'm going to leave my number in the chat. If you can, maybe it's later today after the meeting or next week sometime, we can have a good conversation about how we can move forward together.
Thank you, President Finley. We're going to go ahead and move on with the agenda. So now we're at the appointment section of our meeting. I'll go ahead and go down the names, and if you have an appointee to recommend, you can go ahead and say that. We're going to start off with President Finley. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please, everyone, bear with me. I have a lot to report, but it's a lot of good stuff, and I'm hoping that that'll just shed some light on a lot of things that we've been talking about, and also to.
If I could interrupt, we're in appointments, not board reports.
Oh, goodness. I'm always okay. So I have some board appointments. Not board appointments, committee appointments. First off, I would motion to suspend code 7.03 in the government code to allow committee appointments to be made to the board to AS committees without them being present.
Thank you, President Finley. Is there a second to Jeremiah's motion? The chair recognizes Vice President Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to second the motion.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. We'll be moving on to a vote. Are there any objections or abstentions to suspending the code to allow for a committee appointment to be made in their absence? Seeing none, the code is suspended for the rest of the meeting. You have the floor again, President Finley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll start with the folks who are here. First, I would like to nominate Kenny Moore to the committee to the HYPE committee, the Humboldt Energy Independence Fund. Yes, I believe that's the name of the committee. Kenny, if you would like to speak on your behalf about this committee and tell the board kind of like the reasonings behind you wanting to be on this committee. Kenny, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
So yeah, pretty much like one of the main reasons I joined AS was because I want to contribute to making the campus more sustainable and reducing waste and becoming more energy independent, as the HYPE committee name kind of states. So, and I figured that the HYPE committee would be one of the best spaces to kind of make that happen, and that's why I applied for that committee.
Thank you, Kenny. If any board members have any questions for Kenny regarding why he would like to be appointed to HYPE, you can go ahead and raise your hand right now. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to a vote. Are there any objections or abstentions to appointing Kenny Moore to the HYPE committee? Seeing none, Kenny Moore is appointed to the HYPE committee. Congratulations.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
President Finley, do you have another appointee?
Yes, I do. I have two more. So next up, I want to appoint Indigo Eden. They are not here right now, but Indigo would like to be on the Student Fee Advisory Committee in an effort to really help out and look at what current student needs are. And I think that Indigo will make a great addition to the Student Fee Advisory Committee, because I've seen the passion that Indigo has both on social media, virtually, and also in person when I was able to walk by DeFi. And so I would really recommend that they be appointed to the board of directors. To the Student Fee Advisory Committee. Thank you, President Finley. Is there any questions that someone would like to ask to President Finley about Indigo? You may raise your hand. Seeing none, I would like to ask if there is a motion on the floor to appoint Indigo to the Student Advisory Fee Committee. The chair recognizes Officer Sotomayor.
I motion to appoint Indigo to the Student Fees Advisory Committee.
There is a motion on the floor to appoint Indigo to the Student Fee Advisory Committee. Is there a second? The chair recognizes Representative Floyd.
Second.
Officer Sotomayor has motioned to appoint Indigo Eden to the Student Fee Advisory Committee, and Representative Floyd has seconded that motion. Is there any debate on that motion? Seeing none, we will move on to a vote. Are there any objections or abstentions to Indigo Eden being appointed to the Student Fee Advisory Committee? Seeing none, Indigo Eden is appointed to the Student Fee Advisory Committee. President Finley, do you have any more appointees?
I have one more appointment to be made to the University Space and Facilities Committee, USFAC. This appointment is Amanda Hubner. They're a member of the ERC, they were a member of the ERC this past year, and I believe they're past year before that too. They want to join because they think that they can make a real impact at this level in the university space, and really focusing on providing more spaces for students of our marginalized communities here on campus. I would highly recommend that the board of directors also appoint Amanda to the University Space and Facilities Committee.
Thank you, President Finley. Are there any questions anyone has for President Finley? You can probably talk on behalf of the appointee. You can raise your hand if you have a question. Seeing none, is there a motion on the floor? The chair recognizes Vice President Lopez.
I'd like to motion to approve this committee recommendation appointment.
May I recommend that you specify which committee in your motion?
The University Space and Facilities Committee.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. There is a motion on the floor to appoint Amanda to the University Space and Facilities Committee. Is there a second? The chair recognizes Representative Floyd.
Second.
Thank you, Representative Floyd. Vice President Lopez has motioned to appoint Amanda to the University Space and Facilities Committee, and we have a second from Representative Floyd. Is there any debate on this matter? You can go ahead and raise your hand if you would like to speak. Seeing none, we will move on to a vote. Are there any objections or abstentions to appointing Amanda to the University Space and Facilities Committee? Seeing none, Amanda is appointed. Do you have any more appointees, President Finley?
I have one more appointee, and I promise you this is the last one. Giovanni, I would like to appoint Giovanni Guerrero to the University Senate. For those folks who know about the University Senate is basically the larger campus body that kind of drives a lot of recommendations and advisory for the campus. AS, as a part of this stool of shared governance, has 3 seats on this body, myself included. So we have two appointments to be made to this that could be made, and I would like Giovanni to be one of them. I think that he can speak more on why he would want to be a part of this body itself. So I'll go ahead and yield time to him.
Thank you, Jeremiah. So I wish to be a part of the Senate to bring accountability and further student interest in the University Senate. In addition to that, I'm going to cohesively work with the University Senate to bring fast-moving change on issues where admin has jurisdiction and work hand in hand with the University Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Gio. If a board member would like to ask a question to Gio, you can go ahead and raise your hand at this time. Seeing none, is there a motion on the floor? The chair recognizes Officer Sotomayor.
Yes, I motion to appoint Representative Giovanni Guerrero to the University Senate.
There is a motion on the floor to appoint Representative Gio to the University Senate. Is there a second to that motion? The chair recognizes Vice President Lopez.
I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. Officer Sotomayor motion to appoint Gio to the University Senate, and Vice President Lopez was the second to that motion. Is there any debate at this moment on that motion? You can go ahead and raise your hand if you would like to speak. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to a vote. Are there any objections or abstentions to appointing Gio to the University Senate? Seeing none, Gio, you're appointed to the University Senate. Congratulations. Do you have any more appointees, President Finley?
No more appointees at this time.
Thank you, President Finley. Vice President Lopez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no appointees at this time.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. I do not have any appointees myself at this time, and Vice President Lamar is not present right now. So we will go ahead and move on with the agenda. We are now in reports. Board members are welcome to report on what they have been working on or plan to work on during the summer. We will begin reports with the President. The chair recognizes President Finley. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to have the floor. So I do have a bit to report, so I'll just get to it. So for my board report, between our last time in this meeting, AS has I've had a couple meetings with some of the administration in regards to one conversation that I think we need some more student input on is this conversation around dining services and seeing how to just best serve students with our dining services that we have, or how we might need to improve them. I think some questions that should be asked for folks who want to help ask these questions. What are the impacts that a shift in dining services would cost here at HSU? In addition to that, I've also had a meeting with Mike Fisher to talk, and Dave Nakamura, to talk about more about student union. This is the space conversation that was handed down to me from this past year. I plan on really front loading a lot of information at the July 8th meeting between the student leaders. So I would encourage everyone to kind of meet there as well. And also to kind of give out a space survey so people can fill it out and students can really feel involved in that way as well. In addition to that, what I've been working on is an update to the Fiscal Code, which is a legislation that will come up later on tonight in an effort to really bring our current codes up to date with the language that we use. In addition to that, I've been working on and just really supporting this whole conversation around combating anti-Blackness that was started as a result of the proclamation that you guys all passed on 6/5/20. Also, too, been coordinating conversations with some admin and student leaders. In addition to that, I've been supporting the creation of the SAVP funding committee. This funding committee is going to be in charge of the AS Collabs Fund. I've also been attending the Panetta Leadership Seminar, where I was able to learn a lot of more leadership skills, which I was really grateful I had the opportunity. Campus, the HSU campus itself is doing a campaign around fundraising. The HSU Foundation is basically saying that, they want to raise over $50 million over the course of the next few years to really offer scholarships to a lot of different students here on campus. And so for folks who want to get involved in that conversation, please let me know, shoot me an email, because I think right now, currently, they're kind of conducting maybe like one-on-ones and interviews with folks to see what the student need is. Next up, on Monday, this Monday, we had, the union students hosted a AS Core program transitioning meeting in which we kind of had a time to kind of talk about some of the issues that were presented in public comment today, but also just really staying at the high level. I want to go more in depth, and I think Vice President Lopez and Officer Sotomayor wants to as well. In regards to AS resolutions, I've been working with a lot of the co-authors on a lot of the different resolutions, like the Food Sovereignty Lab, which is up for discussion tonight, that was sponsored by the Executive Committee, the Fiscal Code, like I mentioned before, Also, too, I've been working with Representative Guerrero on an Act to restructure EPD. I've also been working on an act in support of student voices with Vice President Cuellar. I plan on drafting some more legislation to really help with the method on how it's presented, so that way we can ease a lot of things that might come up in the future. So the executive committee met on Wednesday, 6/24. We met and we sponsored the Food Sovereignty Lab resolution. We discussed banking and seeing how that will work. Vice President Lopez has more about this and will probably talk more about this in his report. We also discussed the Student Voices resolution, which Vice President Cuellar will most likely talk about as well. And then also too, we kind of touched upon Listen Up HSU in that account and seeing how we can best support those students who are running it, and seeing how we can just really amplify their voices to the right folks. And so, you know, I've been trying to figure out a way to address this in its best way. I've also had a meeting with the student leaders, with some student leaders, and also to Officer Sotomayor put together a document for us to help inform student leaders about the current situations, and also I think could be an opportunity for us to really explore how we can move forward from here. I guess, not one more thing. I was reached out to a couple of days ago about an orientation. So folks want to really get involved in how AS can participate in this upcoming fall orientation, please reach out to me and send me an email. The plan is AS really needs to put together a video for incoming students, or like a presentation or PDF, something like that. I'm looking for someone to really put together a presentation for AS, and then I'll send over a video myself, welcoming and introducing myself as well as introducing AS. And we can just incorporate that into the presentation when like in a slide or something. In regards to my work with the staff members, we've been meeting to kind of discuss how we can really go over a lot of stuff. I finalized a proposal in regards to admin. If folks really, and this part is really for folks who want to really be involved or get their voices heard at the administrative level. I have one-on-ones with the dean of students. I also have one-on-ones with the AVP, the administrative vice president, and I meet monthly with the president to discuss basically almost everything can be in the table at that time. So I really encourage you all to really email me about anything that you want to really work on together to bring to this level, because I think that I can, if anything, I can be really that voice to help you get who you need to talk to listen to you in the most effective way. I also attended a Title IX discussion and got some updates on the most current version of Title IX. Some of my personal projects that I've been working on is a board initiative proposal. I've been able to receive some feedback from some representatives. We'll be working on ways to come up with, to really address those ideas and put them into this board initiative proposal, so we can get to the end. We can present something a framework in which we can all work together to achieve. And in that board initiative proposal is an idea about student outreach. And so I think that even hearing from students can really be great. So next up, I guess for the committees and board appointments, the public relations officer interviews have begun. So if you all know anyone who wants to be a part of the board of directors in any capacity, specifically the public relations officer who you think they would be great, please send them our way and have them fill out the application. Community interviews have begun as well, as you all have seen. The student leader discussion, I've been working on to try to really, I'm looking for partners also to try to really get a more collaborative, a more interactive process going on in that. So that concludes my report, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for yielding the time.
Thank you, President Finley. The chair recognizes Administrative Vice President Lopez. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so what I've been working on this since our prior meeting, I'll just go off of what one of the things that Jeremiah mentioned, what is our specifically related to our banking. That is in addition tied into our business service agreement that we are working on to hammer out our business services and needs for associated students. And so I've been working closely with stateside employees, in addition to with Executive Director Lund and other board members to hammer down the business service agreement. And the biggest thing that I'm looking into right now is the banking options that we as associate students would like to pursue in the following years and time to come. In addition to that, I have began working on the club grants application, which as I mentioned earlier, will be a equal opportunity for clubs and other programs to apply for student fees to receive funding on viewpoint neutral and opinion neutral programs and events that they would like to conduct. Another big thing that I would really like to bring to the board's attention is my enthusiasm for answering finance questions and business related questions. I strongly encourage anybody here at this meeting today and anybody that hears of this meeting to contact me with any financial questions regarding AS funds, as it is my duty to be the key advisor to the president on Associated Student Funds. So I strongly encourage your responses and emails to me, as my email is now in the chat, DML100. So I will do my best to respond to emails within a 48-hour time span and as quickly as possible. So please, I desperately ask, send your questions to me and I will do my darndest to get you that answer as soon as possible. I'm here to represent you guys and I'm in your best interest to answer any questions you may have. In addition to that, going off of that whole finance part, we are looking for members to fill our finance committee. There is an application process through our website. And lastly, I would really like to bring to your guys' attention the campus-wide discussion that, as you've heard before, several of us have begun working on. So with that being said, please, if you'd like to speak on any of those things that I mentioned, please feel free to email me at any time. I will get back to you as soon as I can. And I'm an open book. Please don't hesitate. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have for today.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. For my board report today, I would like to report that I have been working on a resolution in collaboration with President Finley and in consultation with many of our other board members to support the voices of the students that initiated the change.org petition regarding the racist video that surfaced. I have worked really hard to center the work process of this resolution to be one that is collaborative, so I'm really looking forward to today's discussion item regarding the matter to help better inform this resolution moving forward. I have also been allocating time towards social media content creation, as that is something that I really enjoy to do, regarding topics such as student fees and how to join committees for our Associated Students Instagram account. And I'm really looking forward to working alongside Vice President Lamar, Officer Sotomayor, and Board Coordinator Park to ensure that our Instagram and social media platforms continue to inform and educate our campus community in lieu of our Public Relations Officer. With that, I conclude my board report. The chair recognizes the Social Justice and Equity Officer, Sotomayor. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Get my tab open. So good evening, everyone. Since our last meeting, I have been, 1, continuing the development of a Social Justice and Equity Committee for Associated Students in partnership with the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. 2, researching ways to increase the productivity, responsibility, and accountability of Associated Students. 3, participating in planning meetings for our 22nd annual campus dialogue on race. Our speaker this fall semester, our keynote speaker, excuse me, is going to be Claudia Rankine, the poet and author of Citizen, an American Lyric, goodness. And this year's theme is Global Justice for Black Lives, Examining the Past and Reimagining the Future. And I can provide the link to the website after I finish speaking. I'm really excited about this year's CDOR. So providing feedback on our graduate pledge and how it might better reflect commitments to social justice and equity. If any of these projects interest you, I encourage you to contact me via my email, res130@humboldt.edu, and I'll put it in the chat too as well. And so thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Officer Sotomayor. The chair recognizes the External Affairs Representative Guerrero. You have the floor.
Thank you. I have quite a bit to report today. So first, let's begin with my meetings. I had 2 CSSA meetings. The first CSSA meeting was mostly introductions to what is CSSA, its purpose, and what it serves as, and then personal introductions, as well as committees and the available officer positions within CSSA. There's also a executive position, the legislative vice the Vice President of Legislative Affairs on the CSSA level that anyone can run for as long as you meet the requirements and as long as AS gives the approval. But my second CSSA meeting was on updates on the Supreme Court decision on DACA and updates on COVID-19. So DACA. So basically, the Trump administration was found in violation of the Administrative Procedural Act. And what this means is that DACA stays. And so what this means for our current applicants is that they're protected. What we don't know is that if Homeland Security will accept new applicants, in addition to protecting applicants that are doing study abroad. But DACA is still well in danger because this decision wasn't on the merits of the program. It was essentially saying that, oh, the Trump administration didn't dismantle the program right. So what's predicted is that they're gonna, turn this around and do different ways to dismantle the program. And most importantly, I'm gonna be keeping my eyes on this case in Texas. This case in Texas is more on the merits of the program, and will probably make its way up to the Supreme Court eventually. So DACA is here to stay for now, hopefully forever. And in relations to COVID-19, as I mentioned previously, we got some updates on fees that students have been advocating to be reduced. And so what I've heard is that Category 1 and 2 fees are staying, but Category 3 fees and up are flexible and can potentially change. Housing fee increases was another concern for students because our housing, from what I know, is not going to be in full capacity as it was before. We're going to have like a lot less people in housing, and a concern across CSU was are those fees going to increase to offset the expenditures from a deficit in students? And the answer is that very unlikely. And then tuition increases as well has been a huge concern, and that's very unlikely as well. And I say unlikely because that's the word that they gave me, and the person giving us the updates who works closely with the chancellor said that it's very unlikely, but still, there's room for possibility. So moving on to my projects and what I have been working on. I've been working extensively on the UPD resolution. And then I met with David Hickox to discuss Title IX. I'm hoping to create a info sheet. I haven't gotten around to that yet, so I hope to finish that up this weekend so that we're all informed on the changes to Title IX, and when we're talking to students, we know what we're talking about. In regards to the UPD resolution to restructure our campus police, I'm hoping to meet with Vice President Dow's sometime within the next 2 weeks. I'm going to send an email to him after this meeting, and so that we could have some deliberations on the resolution and see his voice and his insight. And then after that, hopefully pursue that public forum that I've been talking about, where we get students' input and their thoughts and ideas. So hoping to meet with Dow's and add the finishing touches to our resolution and propose that to the next board of director meeting. And some acknowledgements for Casey and Janessa, who have been helping with the resolution. I strongly appreciate you guys' feedback and suggestions. Jeremiah and Roman have been helping me as well, but I can't name Janessa or Casey as the co-authors, so thank you a lot for your guys' help. That's it.
Thank you, Representative Guerrero. The chair recognizes the representative for the College of Natural Resources and Science, Mort. You have the floor.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, I just have a couple of things to report on since the last meeting. I attended like the orientation and transition meetings with Dr. Turnbow, where we went over like the parliamentary procedure stuff, and also the CNRS rep transition meetings, where we talked about the roles of the CNRS representatives and the duties we have to that we have to meet. And in that meeting, we actually talked about a better student outreach program, so that students can be better made aware of what AS is doing, and that we hold like office hours and stuff, and so more people can hopefully come to that as a result. And I got into contact with the Dean of College of the CNRS, Dr. Dr. Oliver. So I'm trying to set up a meeting with him to kind of talk about our goals and introduce ourselves to each other. And I also applied to the Earth Week Every Week committee and the HIFE committee, and I got appointed to the HIFE committee, so I'm hoping to hear back about the Earth Week Every Week committee too. And I also attended the Title IX meeting with President Finley and Gio Guerrero. So yeah, after this meeting, I'm hoping to set up that appointment with Dr. Oliver and talk about where to go from there.
Thank you, Representative Mort. The chair recognizes the representative for the College of Natural Resources and Science, Schmidt-Bauer. You have the floor.
Hey everyone. Yeah, so like I said, I sent a little note, a little memo in the group text, but I've been like insanely busy with work, so I've been a little bit MIA, but it's supposed to calm down pretty soon here. So yeah, my goals are pretty much the same as they were last time. You know, haven't gotten a whole lot done, but I am hoping to hop on the meeting with Kenny and Dr. Oliver, and yeah, also like kind of introduce myself and you know, set out some goals. Like they said, like last 3 weeks ago, same goals. But I do actually something was brought up today that kind of made me think about this. I do want to bring up like some fundraising goals, and because I don't really hear a ton. Maybe I'm not looking in the right place, but I don't hear a ton about like alumni like fundraising. I think that's a great you know, market to tap to just help with funding within our departments. So that's pretty much that. Just kind of, you know, getting back in the loop now that I'm back in Arcata. And yeah, that's about it. But yeah, thank you. I'll keep you guys updated.
Thank you, Representative Schmidt-Bauer. The chair recognizes the at-large Representative Floyd. You have the floor.
Hello, everyone, and good evening. For the last couple of weeks, I've been working on the PSA, and it's coming together really well. I want to thank to Jordan, Casey, and Roman for assisting me in this project, and Jeremiah as well. So after the holiday, I will send out an email to everyone, updating everyone on the next steps. We are ready to prepare that. Our timeline has stretched out a little further, out to maybe the first week of September, just to give everyone time to get to feel themselves on the camera. There'll also be an option for, if you don't want to show your face, you just say our slogan. I want to thank David for the slogan. It's amazing. So yeah, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Representative Floyd. I always love the really positive energy. The chair recognizes Executive Director Lund. You have the floor.
Thank you. I just clicked on something and lost my document. That is how it goes, isn't it? There it is. Okay. So good evening, everyone. As you can see in the project tracker, some of the topics I'm working on with some of you all are the AS assessment, where we're aligning our board trainings to division-wide assessment goals. Also working on the AS HSU Business Service Agreement, we're creating a draft agreement for the 2021 school year. AS Club Grants, we're developing the granting process for clubs to request funds throughout the year. And then the AS Collabs is developing the approval process for funds to be used toward campus-wide events. Also, the committee compensation, that's based on a pilot program that was started last semester. That's for non-board members who serve on AS committees to receive financial compensation for their participation. And then a final new project new to AS this year would be the project compensation contract. And this is something that can be used in conjunction with club grants that request compensation. So student leaders who oversee the event can be compensated from a funded event, AS funded event. I'm still adding links to the project tracker, so please reach out to the teammates I listed in the notes and or myself if you're interested in learning more. Regarding funding, I'm hearing two issues, and one is the need for student employment, and the other is for students to have appropriate support on campus. I really appreciate the passion and persistence that has been demonstrated in these efforts. One thing I've realized is that these communications are addressing a much larger opportunity on campus that is beyond what AS has funded and could fund. Some examples have been mentioned in emails and or social media include like CAPS and SDRC, and the academic cultural centers. Based on our recent board communications with a number of you, I'm also very impressed with you who are taking the Listen Up HSU funding campaign so seriously and how much you sincerely care about the students you represent. I'm beyond impressed with the board this year, and I appreciate how action-oriented you all are. As a few of us have discussed already, while AS cannot independently solve this funding issue, AS can absolutely facilitate conversation with campus decision makers to strategize and implement how to support current students in a period of decreasing funding. It may mean that the support may look a bit different than it did in the past, but identifying current student needs is a big part of the process. And it's due time for a campus-wide collaboration to strategically fund services that are proven to close the equity gaps our campus has. A few things that I know we talked about, like fall census and things like that. And just so everybody knows, we're also waiting to hear from the Chancellor's Office regarding the Apodaca v. White case and how that impacts Category 2 fees in the CSU system. Because as you know, in the legal world, in case law, will set precedents. So even though HSU AS was not named in that lawsuit, it is setting precedents for all Category 2 fees. And so the Chancellor's Office is working on that, and hopefully we hear soon. Once we receive the guidance from the Chancellor's Office, our plan is to then consult with our AS attorney and have him review our budget for feedback. AS will also look at the fall census and see where we're at. The budget that's out on the table right now is based on a projected enrollment of 5,369 students. And as you can recall, like 4 or 5 years ago, the numbers were at 7,000, 8,000. So losing, 3,000 students is significant to a budget, but what we're focusing on is we still have 5,300 students, and those 5,300 students deserve the best education and support possible. So we've absolutely got some work to do, but it will be worth it. We will emerge stronger and better equipped to meet current student needs. And to quote, "Listen up, HSU, let's build bridges." And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Director Lund. And without the Dean here, that concludes our reports. We will now move on to general discussion. Anyone may follow up on any reports. I now ask that you raise your hand to be added to the speakers list, and I will go ahead and call upon you. Is there any general discussion at this time?
Clarifying question.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to ask, and looks like it says board members may yield their time to non-board members for this discussion. So that means the public can also comment on reports.
Yeah, so that's there in case, like, let's say a member of the public were to raise their hand right now, I would be able to see them, but I would have to ask a board member to yield their time to them. But with recent history, there's always been a yielding of time. So if anybody from the public wanted to talk, I'm sure a board member would be able to yield time to them. Does that clarify your question?
Yes, thank you.
Is Is there any general discussion? You can go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you. Seeing no speakers, we will go ahead and move on with our agenda. Old business is now in order. Our only item of old business is also our first item of old business for the year. It's the second reading of the legislation titled An Act to Update the Fiscal Code. This legislation is being co-authored by President Finley and Vice President Lopez. President Finley will now be presenting the legislation and its second reading. President Finley, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to have the floor. And so I'll go ahead and just read the resolves if we could, because the whereases haven't been changed. And so for the resolve part, and with in the specific changes that have been changed from the last meeting, looking at section 13, if we could scroll down there. So the purpose, so basically what I've changed, I'll just read these two sections. The purpose for sports clubs may be funded or may be made available through AS budget process to recognize sports clubs. These funds may be administered by the Recreational Sports Office. Students must be regularly matriculated, currently enrolled to receive AS funds. Non-students will not be funded. Recognized clubs whose primary purpose is to promote and complete an athletic competition will be eligible for AS funding through Sports Clubs Board of Directors travels monies. Section 14, which is also included, is saying all expenditures of AS funds must be approved by the Administrative Vice President, the Executive Director, and the Designated Budget Administrator. Should the Designated Budget Administrator be unavailable, the Executive Director may approve budget expenditures. When the Administrative Vice President is unavailable, the Executive Director may approve budget expenditures. AS will forward appropriate payment requests with supporting documentation to the University for review, approval, and reimbursement for expenditures. So the two that have been changed in section 13 and section 12, the points of change were section in 14.4 saying from old language that we didn't used to use to payment requests, which they are called. In section 13, in saying sports clubs may, previously it did say sports club shall, which did and has been which influenced our budget decision making in the past. And so if we change this language up to make sure that all clubs and all organizations and all recognized student organizations have equal access and equitable access to the funds that we have. Any questions for me at this time? Or wait, I'll yield my time to the chair.
Thank you, President Finley, for presenting and also for yielding back the time. Discussion is now in order regarding President Finley's presentation. I will start a speakers list, and if you would like to speak, you can go ahead and raise your hand to be added to the speakers list. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing none, discussion is closed. I now ask if there is a motion on the floor. The chair recognizes Vice President Lopez.
Motion to approve this resolution.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. May I recommend that maybe we change it to adopt the legislation?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. That motion is in order. Vice President Lopez has moved to adopt legislation titled An Act to Update the Fiscal Code. Is there a second? The chair recognizes Representative Floyd.
Second.
Thank you, Representative Floyd. It has been moved by Vice President Lopez to adopt the legislation titled An Act to Update the Fiscal Code, and Representative Floyd has made the second to that motion. Debate is now in order regarding the motion on the floor. We will begin debate with the original proposer of the motion. So Vice President Lopez, you have the floor.
No debate at this time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If there's any debate, you can go ahead and raise your hand to be called upon. The chair sees that Izzy would like to talk. Is there a board member that would like to yield time to Izzy? You can go ahead and raise your hand. The chair recognizes Officer Sotomayor.
Oh,
We're going to go ahead and let Officer Sotomayor yield time to Izzy, and then I'll go ahead and call on you. So you have the floor, Officer Sotomayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield my time to Izzy.
Izzy, you now have the floor.
is it possible to go down a little bit more, just as far as like the executive director? Is it possible to have just more AS people kind of decide, or does the executive director, just as far as section 4.2 and or section 14.2 and then 14.3, when it comes to the executive director making the decisions on the approved budget expenditures, is it possible to have like just more AS board members instead of the executive director, or do they have to approve the budgets?
Thank you, Izzy. The chair recognizes Vice President Lopez. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To answer that question, Izzy, so I will be I am your elected representative to approve or deny these expenditures in conjunction with Director Lund. So I am directly representing any of your fiscal queries or questions or interests in these approvals.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. The chair recognizes President Finley. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, you know, I also want to say that I think that this is something that I had kind of was thinking about earlier on. This is even last year. And so, you know, just having more student oversight overall. But as VP Lopez has identified, and after I kind of learned more about AS and seeing what really was it about, and maybe my bias kind of comes in because, and I'll identify it in a minute, but the executive director is an employee of the board of directors. And so the board of directors is the folks you see in front of you. And so the ED in essence is kind of is an extension of the board of directors kind of arm when talking about, when in different meetings, when talking about different things. I think prior to this, we had also recognized the fact that the board of directors didn't meet in the summer. So I think that part can definitely be reworked as we move forward. And I do really want to take that into consideration. Another thing to add is the direct supervisor of the ED is the president of the organization, and that's where my bias kind of comes in right now. And saying like I think that whoever is in that role kind of should exercise good judgment in regards to these different codes and constitutions that we have. But again, I do want to recognize you and validate like what you just said. Like, yeah, I think that there could be some more reworking done as we move forward in the rest of the semester.
Thank you, President Finley. Is there any more debate? You can go ahead and raise your hand to be called upon.
Executive Director Lund has a hand.
Thank you, Officer Sotomayor. Executive Director Janessa Lund, you have the floor.
Thank you. I don't have the hand raise function, so I'm over here. So I think that's a great point, Izzy, that you're making. I believe when a lot of these codes were originally created, we didn't have as much technology. And the other thing is that AS, this is the first summer AS has worked through the summer. So I believe what was in the past is because everything was done in paper, if your board member wasn't there to physically sign something, then that gave the ED the opportunity to sign it and get the reimbursement or whatever they're approving to get it processed. But I do think with increased technology that we have now, and with maybe a tradition that we're starting with the board doing work over the summer, I absolutely support something like this. And I guess I'm also saying too that I may not see as much need for any of this substitution because with technology, we're doing a lot of our approvals online. And so David, for example, doesn't have to be in the AS office to give approval. David can do that remotely from the comfort of his home. But yeah, I think those are great points. And how do we update our codes to reflect our current, I'm laughing because my dogs, I'm so sorry. Yeah, but to reflect our current times. Yeah, I think that's great.
Thank you, Executive Director Lund. Is there any more debate? You may raise your hand to be called upon. Seeing, the chair recognizes Officer Sotomayor. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if our board would be willing to consider perhaps amending this to include during the approvals process. I'm not sure if this is would be the correct place, but to include maybe a equity advocate to also be part of just the process of looking over the spending of funds, a non-voting equity advocate.
Thank you, Officer Sotomayor. The chair recognizes President Finley. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to have the floor. Thank you, Officer Sotomayor, for voicing your concerns and your idea. And so I think moving forward, we could definitely create something more collaborative. You know, I plan on really charging the bylaws committee with creating a more collaborative and inclusive constitution, bylaws, and codes. And so with that being said, I think that those more in-depth conversations could be worked out in perhaps the bylaws committee, in which the social justice and equity officer and the representative officer both provide an environmental justice and equity voice and lens on that committee as well. You know, I would say in regards to the funding that we should just make sure that we're being super intentional about the people that we're including. And so really involving and having that idea in there could be beneficial to all of us.
Thank you, President Finley. I see that Izzy has their hand up. If a board member would like to yield time, I would have to see a board member's hand up. The chair recognizes President Finley. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to yield time to Izzy.
Thank you, President Finley. Izzy, you have the floor.
So just kind of trying to wrap my head around this. So as far as like including the equity officer into this, is it possible, like instead of approving this today, just include it and then approve it, or how exactly does this work? Like as far as the fiscal codes, does everyone need to approve it today, or can the equity officer be included in this current fiscal code?
Thank you, Izzy. The chair recognizes President Finley. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Izzy, for that question. I guess in regards to the substitution, because ultimately that's kind of what we're talking about, for the substitution of the executive director for a student position on the board. And to be quite honest, if there's an equivalent to the substitution of the executive director, I think it would be the president. If the admin VP wasn't currently there, having the official representative of all students to be able to say, okay, I think this should go through, would kind of make the most sense. However, I think that more conversations should be had before making a lot of decisions like that, because there could be a lot of different points that could be brought up. I mean, honestly, I don't want to. What if the MMV people that's really kind of can't be there? I don't want to have to continually approve stuff. There's a lot that needs to be talked about before we make those decisions, I think. But this is not the first time, and this is not the only time that the fiscal code will be updated throughout this year. And I'll be sure to include everyone in those conversations when those do happen, which those conversations will be headed by Vice President Cuellar.
Thank you, President Finley. The chair recognizes Officer Sotomayor. You have the floor.
Yes, just a point of clarification is that I was not wishing to suggest we replace the executive director with an equity advocate. Does not have to be my position. It could be You know, we could think of ODEI, someone who's outside of AS, another student representative, something like that, but as an addition, not a replacement.
The chair recognizes Executive Director Lund. You have the floor.
Yeah, so I think for clarification, what we're talking about, what this code is addressing are those the daily stuff, right? We might get 10 payment requests coming through. So you also don't want to bog your system down either. Where I really see like the equity lens, if you want to put more teeth and oversight into that, I would say have that lens at like your Board of Finance when the budgets are being discussed and talked about. So I would write in maybe an ex officio to that place rather than the daily, like, because this stuff is, there's rarely an issue, you know, with this kind of stuff. It's already like what the program or students are already wanting to do and has been approved by other areas. I'd probably focus on that higher level. Just because you don't want to bog this down too much, because then if students have to wait for a lot of approval, then their reimbursements are going to get potentially delayed, you know, just food for thought though.
Thank you, Executive Director Lund. Is there any more debate? You may raise your hand. Seeing none, we will move on to a vote to adopt the legislation and act to update the fiscal code. Board Commissioner Park, may you please take a roll call vote?
Yes, I can. Okay. President Finley?
Aye.
Vice President Lopez?
Aye.
Officer Sotomayor?
Aye.
Representative Schmidt-Bauer?
Aye.
Representative Mort?
Aye.
Representative Floyd?
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. I'm sorry to double check. Angelica is still in her tutoring, correct? Okay, then yes, that was the full vote. That is unanimous.
Thank you, Board Commissioner Park. The ayes have it and the motion carries. The legislation and act to update the fiscal code is adopted. We will now be moving into new business, and new business is now in order. Our first item of new business is the election of the vice chair. The board will now elect a vice chair, and we will be doing this. Sorry, my tab closed again. As Jeanette says, as it does. So the board will elect a vice chair to serve in support of and in the absence of the chair. Members are encouraged to nominate or self-nominate representatives to serve as the board's vice chair. I now ask that board members raise their hand to nominate a fellow board member or to self-nominate to serve as the vice chair. Please remember that this is just the nomination portion of this process, and nominees will have the opportunity to speak on why they would like to serve as vice chair after nominations have been made. So you may now raise your hand if you would like to nominate someone or if you would like to self-nominate yourself to serve as vice chair. The chair recognizes President Finley. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I do, if I can just say something, not really nominate folks right now, but just really say, I think the role of vice chair could be great. For those who might be super interested in being involved, the vice chair sits on the executive committee, and the vice chair kind of gets an ability to get some voice and some input in those higher level discussions, I guess, for AS. I would really encourage you all to nominate yourself, of course. But I think that if you're interested in having a different type of leadership role, definitely go for it. I think that could make something, you can end up doing something that you never thought you could. I really encourage you to consider it. I yield my time to the chair.
Thank you, Board Commissioner Park. Thank you, President Finley. Sorry about that one. If there are any nominations to be made, or if you would like to self-nominate yourself, please raise your hand. The chair recognizes Representative Mort. You have the floor.
I'll self-nominate myself to be vice chair.
Thank you, Representative Mort. You will be added to the list of nominees.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Representative Guerrero.
I'd like to nominate Roman to the vice chair position.
Thank you. Officer Sotomayor, do you accept this nomination?
Yes.
You will be added to the list of nominees. Okay, the chair recognizes President Finley. You have the floor.
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Montel Floyd for the position of vice chair.
Representative Floyd, do you accept this nomination?
Yes, I do.
You will be added to the list of nominees. Sorry, I'm like physically handwriting the list. Are there any more nominations or self-nominations? Seeing no further nominations, each nominee will have 3 minutes to address the board of directors and explain why they would like to serve as the vice chair. After they have spoken, there will be the opportunity for a maximum of 2 questions to be asked of the nominee. We'll begin with Representative Mort. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I kind of just took President Finley's advice to heart right there, and I just think it would be a good idea. I thought it would be a great opportunity to kind of further my leadership skills and kind of see what it's like to chair a meeting. And I think that would, and I feel like I am kind of a calm voice and can kind of like keep order. So I feel like that's the only reason I self-nominated. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Mort. If there's any questions that the board would like to ask, Representative Mort, please remember that there's a maximum of 2 questions, but you can go ahead and raise your hand at this time.
Can you repeat that? Sorry, I missed that.
It's okay, Representative Guerrero. So right now we're at the portion of the self-nomination process where Representative Mort has gone ahead and addressed the board. So now the board has the opportunity to ask a maximum of 2 questions of Representative Mort. If anyone has any questions regarding why Representative Mort would like to be the vice chair. But the chair recognizes Vice President Lopez. You have the floor.
My apologies, my hand slipped.
It's okay. If there are no questions for Representative Mort, we will go ahead and move on with the speeches. Officer Sotomayor, you have the floor.
Yes, perhaps maybe a question before I even begin to speak is that the vice chair, per my knowledge, or that the chair, per my knowledge, is not allowed to vote. Is that correct?
I can go ahead and answer that.
Please. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So when I'm serving as chair, I don't vote unless there's like a tie of some sort. And then the chair is empowered to vote, but doesn't have to vote, but they're empowered to vote if they would like to break the tie. So let's say that if I were to be absent and the vice chair were to be serving as a chair, they wouldn't be able to vote as well. Or if there was a topic during a meeting that I would not be able to be non-partial about and be non-biased about it, the chair would step in, and at that point they wouldn't be able to vote. But you have the floor to address the board of directors.
I think in that case, it might serve the board better if I rescind the nomination, because having a social justice equity officer who can vote on things might better benefit the board and our students.
For sure. So I would just like to confirm that Officer Sotomayor, you would like to rescind your nomination?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Officer Sotomayor. We will go ahead and move on to Representative Floyd. You have the floor to address the Board of Directors.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the nomination, President Finley. The reason why I would like to be vice chair is because I have prior experience. I served as a college president for my associated students at Merritt College for roughly about 3 years. So I have experience chairing and being a part of executive council meetings. So I would like the chance again to do so on this level of being at a university. So basically, I'm just here for the experience, and I love advocating for students. So this just gives me another step in my leadership.
Thank you, Representative Floyd. If anyone would like to ask a question to Representative Floyd, we have a maximum of 2 questions, but you can go ahead and raise your hand right now. The chair recognizes Representative Guerrero. You have the floor.
So clarifying question, I should have asked this earlier, but so board members are the only ones allowed to serve as vice chair, right?
Yeah, so it would have to be a current Board of Directors member. Are there any other questions for Montel? I won't count that one as a question if anybody would like to ask other 2 questions. You may raise your hand. Seeing no questions, we will be moving on to a vote. So how voting is going to work is that each member will have the opportunity to vote once for one nominee. I will say the name of the nominee. For example, if you would like to vote for Mayuli, please indicate so with a green check mark. And then board members will then use the green check mark to vote for their preferred nominee when they are called. The nominee with the most votes or green check marks will be elected the vice chair. So we will now begin our voting with Representative Mort. So if you would like to vote for Representative Mort to be the vice chair, you can go ahead and do the little green check mark in the participants list right now. Okay, if you would like to vote for Representative Floyd to be the vice chair, you would now be the time to click the green check mark. Okay, thank you everyone for voting. You can go ahead and unclick the little green check mark. That concludes our voting, and I want to say congratulations to Representative Floyd, who has been elected to serve as the vice chair for this year. Congratulations. Okay, so our next item of business is the first reading of the resolution titled Resolution to Support the former Hilltop Marketplace be designated as a food sovereignty lab and cultural workspace. The board will receive a presentation and consider a resolution that the AS president issues a 1 to 3 paragraph memo in support of the food sovereignty lab. So we will be receiving a presentation from Officer Sotomayor. So Officer Sotomayor, you now have the floor to give a presentation and give the first reading of the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am so honored to be reading this resolution. I think the students who participate in the Food Sovereignty Lab are incredible. I saw all the research they did to bring this proposal to the campus in the first place, and also saw all the hardship they went through to get even here to us. So I hope that everyone really listens along with this resolution, just because I think it is so important and so will help our campus so much. And so I'm just going to go ahead and start reading it. I'm going to read it using my own screen, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair, just because the letters are bigger for me.
You're totally okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, this is this was authored by Amanda McDonald, by the way, an NAS research assistant and all-around good person. This resolution is the resolution to support the former Hilltop Marketplace be designated as a food sovereignty lab and cultural workspace. Whereas the Associated Students Board of Directors of Humboldt State University is the single recognized voice for over 6,500 students, and whereas the mission of the Associated Students of Humboldt State University serves to, quote, assist in the protection of rights and interests of the individual student and the student body, and to, quote, stimulate the educational, social, physical, and cultural well-being of the university community, and whereas in 2018, a research project investigating national public opinion about how non-natives perceive native peoples revealed that, quote, most people believe the native population is declining and most do not think about native people much, if at all. Native people are misrepresented if they are even mentioned and are invisible in American society. Invisibility is in essence the modern form of racism used against Native Americans. It is this invisibility that leads to a college access and completion crisis among Native American students. When a student is invisible, his or her academic social needs are not met. This leads to students feeling alienated and alone, derailing their matriculation and the realization of their dreams and potential. Invisibility, prevents many young Native people from even thinking college is a possibility. Others entertain the idea but are stopped from enrolling in college because of negative experiences with admissions process or on college campuses. Removal is one method in which Native Americans are rendered invisible on campuses, end quote. Whereas current Indigenous representation on Humboldt State University's campus is lacking substance. There are areas where Humboldt State has already succeeded, including the Native American Forum and recent lobby remodel within the Behavioral and Social Science building. Whereas the Office of the President at Humboldt State University lists the following commitments on their website, quote, we will commit to increasing our diversity of people and perspectives, and quote, we will be exemplary partners with our communities, including tribal nations, and quote, we believe that we have a special opportunity to learn from the Native American cultures, the unique ecosystem, and special communities of our region, and to apply that knowledge, end quote. Whereas in fall 2019, the students of NAS 331, Indigenous Natural Resource Management Practices, imagined a class project that would have lasting benefits for the campus community beyond the scope of one semester. Students worked collaboratively to conduct interviews, research, and identify potential funding. Students interviewed Indigenous faculty and staff and asked how they would re-indigenize the Humboldt State University campus. Interviewees expressed the need for workshops and space for making traditional foods, regalia, baskets, and medicines. The proposed project from the class is a food sovereignty lab and cultural workshop center. In November 2019, we submitted a space request to the University Space and Facilities Advisory Committee to implement the lab/center in the former Hilltop Marketplace in the BSS building. Beginning spring 2020, two student research assistants were hired through the Sponsored Programs Foundation to pursue further work on this project. We have partnered with the Native American Studies Program, Indian Tribal and Educational Personnel Program, and the Council of American Indian Faculty and Staff, the Environmental Studies Program, and students from across majors and disciplines at HSU to complete the beginning phase of this research project. The students in our class who helped design the first phase of this project represented 12 different majors from both the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences and the College of Natural Redwoods and Sciences. Whereas the concept of food sovereignty directly relates to building community resilience and preparing for disasters such as global pandemics and climate change. The Declaration of Nieli, the first global forum on food sovereignty, defines, quote, food sovereignty is the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define their own food and agricultural systems. It puts the aspirations and needs of those who produce, distribute, and consume food at the heart of food systems and policies rather than the demands of markets and corporations, end quote. Whereas the Food Sovereignty Lab will function as a workshop and research center for practicing food sovereignty in multiple innovative ways, centering food sovereignty through Indigenous pedagogies and enhancing academic resources for multiple disciplines across campus. This lab will illuminate respect for learning with Native American cultures and help build the future of how we address climate change, food insecurity, and social justice. Whereas the lab will include a commercially certified kitchen, storage cabinets, work tables, office space for researching and studying, a whiteboard, a large television for use in presentations, and a sound system. In addition, a native plant and food garden to be installed around the BSS building to supplement the Food Sovereignty Lab. Whereas the Food Sovereignty Lab is seeking to create a more sustainable, socially just, and welcoming campus by promoting education and research with food sovereignty. Food sovereignty teaches us that the relationships between people and nature are fundamental to our existence. A food sovereignty lab can provide a platform to educate people on how to repair that relationship and to build decolonized futures. Whereas the vision of Associated Students strives for social and environmental justice and enhancing the livelihood and academic success of the student body. Whereas the space request for this lab/center was denied April 22nd, 2020. Quote, the committee has considered the former Hilltop Marketplace space for a function that will serve as a general student space that may be accessed by all, such as, in parentheses, such as a student lounge, whereas there is a lounge on every floor of the BSS building, in parentheses. Whereas the Food Sovereignty Lab was designed by the students, is envisioned as a space that can be accessed by all, not only our diverse student population, but also our surrounding communities, tribal nations, and national and international scholars and community leaders. It truly opens up a space at our university that can build excitement and true connection, which can only serve to increase our impact for recruitment, retention, and enrollment at Humboldt State. There is potential for this project to partner with organizations across the world who are working on these issues. And as we look at how HSU can strategically, quote, tell our story, end quote, and build opportunities for those students, or for students, this project would answer so many of the ongoing calls for action for reshaping the future of our university. Whereas, considering the history of both the BSS building as being originally designed to honor Native peoples and space on campus, and the ongoing discussion from the President's office and administration at HSU to continue to, quote, indigenize Humboldt State, end quote, this is precisely why we are hoping for a continuity of indigenous space near the Native Forum, Houdini Gallery, and NAS department. Whereas, we appeal this decision and request of the Associated Students we appeal this decision and request the support of the Associated Students to advocate for the Food Sovereignty Lab, that it be implemented in the former Hilltop Marketplace to support student success, professional development, inclusivity, social and environmental justice. Resolved, that the Associated Students of Humboldt State University are requesting the inclusion of the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Lab in the upcoming HSU Academic Master Plan per consultation with the submitting author, Amanda McDonald, and any edits that are necessary. Resolved, the AS president issues a 1 to 3 paragraph memo in support of the Food Sovereignty Lab project in the former Hilltop Marketplace location that is signed by the Board of Directors. And that is the end of the resolution.
Thank you, Officer Sotomayor, for presenting. Discussion is now in order regarding Officer Sotomayor's presentation and first reading. I will go ahead and start a speakers list, and if you would like to speak, you can go ahead and raise your hand and you'll be added to the speakers list and I'll be able to call upon you. With that being said, the chair recognizes President Finley. You have the floor.
Thank you for allowing me to have the floor. Thank you, Officer Sotomayor, for reading this wonderful resolution. It's beautifully well written. My question is only, who am I issuing this to? Am I taking it to the University Senate? Am I submitting it to the University President? Just so I know kind of after I write it, who do I take it to?
Thank you, President Finley. Is there any more discussion? You may raise your hand to be called. The chair recognizes Officer Sotomayor. You have the floor.
I would suggest perhaps we add an amendment that sends the memo to our regular list of people. I'm sorry, I can't recall everyone who's on that list, or rather the people appropriate to send it to.
I would advise that because this is still the first reading, we can go ahead and contact Amanda, and officers and board members can go ahead and reach out. So if anyone has Amanda's email, they can probably reach out to Amanda. But is there any more discussion? You can raise your hand and you can be called upon. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, discussion is closed. Thank you, Officer Sotomayor, for your presentation and giving the first reading of this resolution. And our last item of business is to discuss support for the student voices that initiated the change.org petition titled Expel to Race Students. I am really hoping that this discussion will help inform the resolution that I have been working on and that I was inspired to write after seeing that the petition garnered 21,187 signatures. And I'm really hoping that this discussion will help us gauge how the board feels in regard to this topic. This is a discussion item, and so I will begin a speakers list, and you can go ahead as well and raise your hand if you would like to speak, and I'll go ahead and call upon you. Is there any discussion? The chair recognizes Officer Sotomayor. You have the floor.
I would just advocate that we pass the legislation that Mayuli has written when it appears on our agenda.
Thank you, Officer Sotomayor. Is there any more discussion regarding this topic? The chair recognizes President Finley. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to commend you and your work that you've done, put in on this resolution. I really did. Vice President Cuellar did a lot of legwork on this resolution, a lot of her time and energy into this. And I think that it is going to be very powerful, and I highly encourage and just echo what Officer Sotomayor said about passing this piece of this legislation when it does come up for vote.
Thank you, President Finley. Is there any more discussion? You may raise your hand to be called. Seeing no further discussion, that concludes our new business. I really appreciate the feedback that we got today, and I'm really looking forward to bringing this resolution to the board. We will now move on to announcements. Board Coordinator Park, may you please go over announcement letter A and B.
Yes, I can. And I'll just get it onto the screen too. And you said A and C. So we still have 6 board vacancies. 4 are voting members and 2 are non-voting members. So, I might just, so we still have space for a public relations officer, which you heard Jeremiah speak on a little bit. We also have space for a non-voting parliamentarian who would serve in helping with our parliamentary procedure. We then have voting members from the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, still looking for a representative, also the College of Professional Studies, and a graduate student representative, as well as another at-large representative. Additionally, we do have our next summer meeting on Friday, July 17th at 3 p.m. We are using the same meeting ID, so hold on to it. It's going to be recurring.
Sure, thank you, Board Coordinator Park. For announcement letter B, on July 8th, 2020 at 2 p.m., we have the student leadership discussion, and you can go ahead and email jaf144@humboldt.edu for an invite. Are there any other announcements that someone would like to share? You can go ahead and raise your hand if you would like to share an announcement. The chair recognizes Izzy. You have the floor.
I wanted to ask, as far as those vacancies, can we be appointed if we're still in a club, or or if we're in a center, or is that conflict of interest, or how exactly are we still able to apply or not?
Thank you, Izzy. I would maybe ask that either the executive director or the board coordinator maybe go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, I can speak to it. Inside of there is a conflict of interest with AS funded employees having a seat on the AS board of directors, and so there is in our constitution or government code. I'll find the reference after I'm done speaking, but it does identify that somebody who is being paid by the associated students in another area cannot sit as an executive officer on the board of directors. So our representatives for both of the colleges, professional studies, arts, humanities, and social sciences, the graduate student position, and the at-large representative do not fall in that category. So I know it's kind of minutia. If you would like me to re-clarify, I feel like I maybe talked in a circle there.
Thank you, Board Coordinator Park. The chair recognizes Vice President Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to further reiterate my willingness to answer any emails regarding any financial questions relating to associated student fees. Again, you guys have my email, so please do not hesitate. I am I'm pushing this very hard. Please do not hesitate to email me about any financial questions, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. The chair recognizes Officer Sotomayor. You have the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out our L4HSU events that are going on over the summer, and I believe they'll still be going on maybe, no? Is someone saying no? I don't know. But look at the calendar. The events are awesome. Everyone in the library is putting this together is awesome. Lots of great equity-centered events as well, particularly the one addressing social justice during COVID. I believe there's still one more meeting of that left. And again, our campus dialogue on race is going to be this October. So be on the lookout for that, and there will be calls for proposals soon.
Thank you, Officer Sotomayor. I see that Izzy has their hand raised. Is that a leftover hand, or would you like to speak? If so, you have the floor. Okay, I'll go ahead and move on to the adjournment of the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? The chair recognizes President Finley.
I motion to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, President Finley. President Finley has moved to adjourn this meeting. Is there a second? The chair recognizes Vice President Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to second the motion to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, Vice President Lopez. We got a motion from President Finley to adjourn this meeting, and we got a second to that motion from Vice President Lopez. We will now move on to a vote. Are there any objections or abstentions to adjourning this meeting? Seeing none, the meeting is adjourned at 5:09 p.m. Thank you for joining us.